Hey friends, I'm Otis Gibbs, and this is Greg Martin. He's going to share some stories about hanging out with Billy Gibbons.
When Pickin' on Nashville was released in October 1989, we heard a rumor from James Harmon, God bless him, he's gone now, that Billy Gibbons was giving copies of Pickin' on Nashville away to friends. And I thought, well, he must like us or he thinks we're funny. So I don't know which one it is, you know. Somebody gave me his address. We sent him some shirts, this and that, probably 3 for each of the guys. 1991, get a phone call, and it's his secretary, Miss Denise. Said, "Is this Greg Martin?" I said, "Yeah, this is Denise with Billy Gibbons. Are you available to talk?" I said, "Yeah." He gets on the phone, and we just hit it right off. And he's telling me stories about Hubert Sumlin, you know, soaking in Oxidol and all kind of crazy stuff. And they're going to be playing in Lexington, Kentucky in like 2 days, and he left his tickets. So I think it was me, Richard. It was most of the Headhunters. Maybe one of the guys didn't go. So we went, the Black Crowes opened. That was their first tour, I think. But anyway, after the show, we got to go back and meet Gibbons. And I remember he was very, very respectful because our wives was with us. And this girl, they're having a meet. This is back when they did meet and greets, you know. This girl comes back and just lifts her top up for him to sign. He has her put out. He had her put out, you know.
Tells her to leave.
I think Dusty seemed to enjoy it, but yeah, I think Billy knew that it was, you know, the wives were like, "What?" You know. But that was our first meeting, and we just hit it off. And I don't see him as much now, but gosh, you know, he would call me and start sending me. He sends every so often he'll send a CD or something like like a little homemade CD of like maybe it's Robert Nighthawk or just some really obscure blues and stuff that I need to hear. And I remember one time this had been like 94. I was going to the NAMM show. About 2 or 3 times I went solo to the NAMM show on the West Coast. So I flew out of Louisville. We had to stop over in Memphis. I take a nap. I wake up. There's a guy next to me, next aisle over. And I see he's making one of these, remember the old phones in the seat? He's making a phone call. I keep looking at this guy and go, man, he looks familiar. And finally I see the beard. I go, Billy. He said, Greg, how are you doing? You know. And I said, hey, let's call Denise. You know, he said, call Denise. So we end up getting to L.A., and my stepdaughter, Sherry, was supposed to pick me up. Their car broke down. So a friend brought her. Billy said, no, Sherry, you come with her. He knew Sherry because she played in a group called the Blue Bonnets out there with Kathy Valentine from the Go-Go's. And so he already knew Sherry and said, no, we'll go hang out. And we went to record stores, and he went to look at a car he was having built. We were running around his limo with him, you know. And we go in a record store, and they'd want him to sign stuff. He said, but no, you got to let Greg sign too. He's really generous that way. So that was one time. And then, you know, we'd go to shows and hang out with him. And a few years ago, me and him hung out down in Nashville. I took Boone Froggatt from Otis, and we hung out, about 5 or 6, just eating Mexican food and just talking Marshall amplifiers and guitars. Peter Green, we both loved Peter Green, and Eric Clapton, Mick Taylor, and talking, well, what amp you think? But I mean, the first questions I had, what were you playing through? What were you playing? I mean, you know, come on, tell me, Billy, what was that? You know, because I want to know about the Rio Grande amps early on that he was using. So basically what he was doing, I think, just taking his old Marshall, 69 Marshalls and put them in, somebody came up with these Rio Grande cabinets. We thought he had some kind of special amp that made the Billy Gibbons sound, you know. It's just in them hands, man. He's a funky dude, man. You know, he's so great. But I've been fortunate that he's been a big influence and an encourager. I used to do this thing called Licks from the Outhouse, which I should probably do it for. And I'd send them to him, and he loved it. He'd say, I like that. He said, he called me one time, he and Gilligan were, said, I love what you just sent me. Just keep sending me those licks. You know, okay, sure. I learned all this stuff from you, Billy. Come on. I'm just throwing it back at you. Yeah, such a great guy. Great fellow. They're very light strings. Light strings. He does use like 7s and 8s. And that's the conversation we had. Of course, Elwood. We've known Elwood Francis for years. He's from Lexington. He was in a band with my stepdaughter, Sherry, the Mighty Skullhead. They were in a punk rock band together. So we've known Elwood forever and love him. And we're proud for him. He's playing bass now, So he was the guitar tech for years. So yeah, Billy, I remember showing up at a gig in '97 at the Louisville Palace in Louisville. We get backstage and Billy's got a laptop. That was one of the first laptops I ever seen, and he's back there. Oh yeah, Greg, I'm looking at stuff. How it is, an instant gratification. Whatever. He was digging it, and he just immediately said, "I'm gonna show you." He showed me his rig. How he got his sounds. He had whatever it was on stage at the time. I can't remember what he had, but off the side of the stage he had a Marshall preamp. Maybe 2, probably, and then a Marshall amplifier, just the amplifier section, and the EQ. And he EQs the guitars to simulate pearly gates. But then he has a speaker, an isolated speaker somewhere. But no, when he picks his guitars up, they're very light, very easy to play, so his touch is very, very light, very light. Best I remember, the frets are just kind of, they're not real small, but with those I think they're not real big because I guess the strings would be really hard to manipulate. But man, we've been to gigs where Billy would, like I remember one time, Sioux Falls or wherever it was, somewhere out west, he had us out and we set us up next to the sound man, and he had a case of beer there for everybody. And then one time at the Grand Ole Opry he played, and we stood off on the side and watched, and he's been really good to us. Guitars, oh yeah, he's the guitar man. I've learned a lot about guitars from him. When Billy's on to talk about guitars and he wants to give you some information about people you need to learn about, yeah, you better listen. And I take notes. And I have for years. And I value that. He's my professor. There again, Billy's been a hero since Rio Grande Mud. Me and some friends had a little band together. One summer we decided we're going to move to Memphis, Indiana. You know where that's at. And we know somebody that knows somebody at Columbia Records. How silly. I think that's one of the greatest attributes as a kid is ignorance. Because if you knew what you know now, you would have never done it. You've got to be a little ignorant in the music business, We know this guy, and she probably worked at the Columbia Record Club or something. We didn't know any better. So we moved to Memphis, Indiana, and I starved to death one summer. There was this little store next to the railroad tracks in Memphis, and we'd go buy this peanut butter and jelly in one jar, and that's what we'd eat, a sandwich or 2 a day, and that's what we had, But I could go back to Louisville and eat a decent meal at my parents' house maybe twice a week. But anyway, my buddy Bill Judd, who was the drummer at the time, he brings Rio Grande Mud in, and I'm going, oh my God, what is that? It's 3-piece music, but it connects with us because it's got country, blues, rock, and it's just cool. What a cool band. So I loved the band, just loved ZZ from day one. Then I backtracked and heard the first album. And years later, I become familiar with the Moving Sidewalks and some of the other things Billy did. I had him on the show a few years ago. Then he called in the other night when we celebrated 22 years for about 5 minutes. He called in. Hey, I said, Billy, I'm listening to the Lowdown Hoedown down here. And he was in the studio. But you'll run. I know you will run into him someday, and you'll love it.